We are now live.
Hi, this is Tony Kent, and welcome to another episode of Tony Kent Writes and Cross-Examines. Today, our very amateurish cross-examination that takes place over the internet is with the novelist and journalist Quentin Bates. Quentin is the author of the Icelandic officer Gunnhildur series, which began with Frozen Out, continued through, I think, 6 more books, Cold Comfort, Children of Bone and More, and which has its 7th entry, Cold Malice, released on the 11th of this month, which, for the purposes of this, is today, because we're going to pretend that I'm recording this on the 11th of June. So get out there, buy the book. It's available now, or pre-order if somehow this goes out earlier. So, Quentin, thank you very much for agreeing to come on and take part from my kitchen to your kitchen.
Thank you. Yeah,
we should change the name of the show, shouldn't we? It should be from my kitchen to your kitchen.
Your kitchen's a bit more stylish than mine because I haven't got any Bond posters.
This is the only stylish thing in my entire house, which is why I sit here. So,
yeah, okay, fair enough.
The backdrop is entirely misleading. The rest of the place is a dump.
I just sit here because it's the closest place I can get to the coffee machine.
So that's basically where you sit all the time, working.
Pretty much, yeah. I work. There's a shed as well where I work as well, but I tend to keep the day job stuff in the shed and my stuff in here.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. I know the answer to this, but people may be interested. You write, obviously, Icelandic noir, would we call it?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And you're 9 books in now, or 7 books in with 2 novellas, into the Gunnhildur series. I'm going to have to keep looking off to say Gunnhildur, because I keep wanting to say Brunhilde. The Gunnhildur series.
I can rename her if you like.
But you're not writing it from Iceland, though, are you?
No, I'm writing it from the south of England.
And today is lovely sunny weather, and it's certainly 24 here. It's going to be at least that where you are. Is it difficult to get back into the Iceland, sort of the Icelandic mindset when you're sitting in a nice, lovely part of England? Or a nice sunny part of England?
It's a sunny part of England at the moment. It isn't always like this.
That's true, that's true.
No, it's not difficult at all to get back into the mindset, because I lived in Iceland for an awful long time.
Yes.
Well, a wonderfully long time, actually. I lived there for 10 years and pretty much went native while I was living there.
Yeah. Well, what took you to Iceland?
A series of coincidences.
Any of them that we can know about, or are they all just things that you don't want anyone to know?
Essentially, I was offered a job there for a few weeks, well, for a few months, as part of a gap year.
Yeah.
So I went there to work in this factory for a few months, and then I was going to come home and go off to university.
Yeah.
And then my A-level results came through, and they were pretty appalling because I hadn't really done very much work at college. So there was no university place to go to, so I just stayed there.
Okay. And so you were very young then. You were very young to be off there.
Say again?
You were very young to be finding your way out to Iceland.
I was 18, yeah.
And how long did you stay?
10 years.
10 years?
Yeah.
And you were a journalist, aren't you? I know
I am
you're
now,
a journalist. Yeah. When did that start?
That started. I can't remember. It was a gradual changeover. Because I
was wondering whether or not that happened while you were in Iceland. To be honest.
No, that was afterwards.
Okay.
I used to be a seaman.
Right.
I was a trawlerman for a long time.
Okay.
And I trained as a trawler. I trained as a ship's officer.
Right. And was that initially in Iceland? Was that starting out there?
Yeah. I was the first. I was the first foreigner to graduate from navigation college.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah.
And so you went out to sea out there. I mean, you think about seamen off the coast. I think about sort of Scottish guys off the coast of Scotland and in the North Sea, and how tough they must be with, how cold and the conditions. But Iceland's got to be even worse, isn't it? It's got to be even harder.
It can get a bit hairy sometimes.
Yeah.
But actually, the brown trouser moments were remarkably few in Iceland compared to fishing here, because I worked on British boats as well.
Right.
Iceland was. There was one particular trawler I worked on for about 4 years, and it's the only time up until I was about 50 that I actually put on weight.
Really?
Because there was.
I could do with that job.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So when you say a seaman, you were like rather, it wasn't merchant seaman. You were a fisherman.
I was a trawlerman, yeah.
A trawlerman. So this is one of the few jobs that I think I could actually understand, in the sense that when people tell me what they do for a living, I often don't really understand what it was. But I think we've all got an idea. of what that involves, of what being a trawlerman involves. And I think anybody who's watching this, their idea will be, it must be bloody hard.
It depends. Some boats are hard and some aren't.
Right.
I spent 2 years. I spent 2 summers as the mate on a shrimp trawler.
Right. And
it was the easiest job I've ever had. It was wonderful.
Well, I've seen Forrest Gump, so I understand that.
Because it was fishing over the summer, so there's daylight pretty much round the clock.
Yeah.
This is off the north of Iceland, and you tow at 1.5, 2 knots for 8, 9, 10, 12 hours.
What speed is that? I'm completely ignorant of anything about the sea. What's 8 or 9 knots is what?
A knot is 1.8 kilometers per hour.
Right. So it's okay. Right. So it's quite close to a mile an hour then.
It's a knot is a little bit faster than a land. Well, a nautical mile is a little bit longer than a land mile.
Okay. So you're
a knot is a nautical mile per hour.
Right. So you're effectively you're at jogging speed, really, aren't you? So you're doing your job at jogging speed.
For trawling for shrimp, it's not even a jogging speed. It's a strolling speed almost.
Right.
And you tow for 8, 9, 10 hours because you want to get as much of the daylight as you can.
Yeah.
It takes an hour or so to haul the gear, shoot it back, deal with the catch, and then you just sit back.
Yeah.
It's the easiest job I've had ever.
But I have to say, I still think even the bit where you're saying, well, you've got to pull the hour of work is too much for me. I think I'd give that a miss. So
I've also worked on boats where you didn't really get an awful lot of sleep either.
Yeah, no, I understand. I've seen Deadliest Catch, so I'm going to imagine that was what you're up to.
Okay, let's not go there.
Is that like when a lawyer watches something set in the Old Bailey? Is it?
Yes, it is.
In that case, we won't go there because otherwise I'll get onto some tangents.
The Deadliest Catch is the other side of the world, and things are clearly very different there.
Yeah, they do things ever so slightly differently. So, how do you make this transition then? Well, the transition from England to Iceland and back to England is amazing. How do you make the transition from trawlerman to journalist?
I started selling pictures to magazines. And gradually I started writing captions, and the captions got longer and longer.
Yeah.
Until they turned into articles. And then eventually one of these magazines I was freelancing for offered me a job.
Right.
So I thought
is that what brought you back to England?
No, I was already back here by then.
Right, okay.
Yeah, we'd already decided to give it a try. So we came back here with various. I left as a penniless teenager and came back with a wife and children and mortgages and all the rest of it. So
back on the boats and then back in as a journalist. So the journalism, I assume, the journalism led to the writing, led to the want to actually start writing some full-on books.
Pretty much, yeah. That's how it came about.
Okay, and that began then with the Gunnhildur series. It began with Frozen Out. The first of the novels was Frozen Out. That
began with Frozen Out, yeah.
Okay. Now, is there any particular? Was there a reason? It may be obvious. I don't know. Is there a reason that you've obviously set your writing in Iceland, but with none of your nautical experience, or does it include that?
Originally, no. There's a little bit of that comes into the latest one.
Right. Okay.
There's just a touch.
Okay. But generally, it's set on land in Iceland, and it's a police procedural, isn't it? Officer Gunnhildur, a police procedural, but set there.
Originally, there were police procedurals, and the later ones in the series have become more criminal procedurals.
Right. Okay. What's the difference? I generally don't know.
There's just more about the bad guys in the later ones.
Right. Okay. So it's less about the investigating of the bad guys, more about what the bad guys get up to.
Yeah. It's more about the bad guys getting things wrong and making mistakes and tripping each other up. And
but you still have your central character.
Yeah, but she's in there as well. But she just bad guys are just so much more fun to write.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. They don't have to follow any rules. They can do what they like. They can get things wrong. They can, they don't have to follow any logic. They don't have to follow procedures.
Yeah.
You can make them do whatever you like.
I noticed that. I've got a bad guy in my very first book. I killed him at the end, and then my publisher said, "Do not kill that man. Bring him. You can't. He's got to survive this." So he survived this, and he's now he's now appearing in my 4th book, and I have to say, bringing him back and just allowing him to do what he does, it's just been a pleasure. I mean, they are so much more fun to write.
Yeah, and a good villain is just wonderful. Yeah,
no, they really are. I mean, given what I do as my day job, I'm a criminal barrister in my day job. So I represent a lot of people who are accused of being good villains. Is how we'll put it. And I've got to say, the more serious the accusation, I don't deal with certain kinds of offences that you'd find distasteful. I just won't do it. But in terms of the more serious the allegation about sort of the level of organisation of criminality, or where they might be in a hierarchy, the more interesting these people are, and they can be fascinating. So when you're writing them, it becomes they are just such a pleasure to write, aren't they?
Yeah, they're loads of fun. I really like writing villains, and people who aren't necessarily villains, but just ordinary people who are under enormous pressure.
Yeah,
and you can turn somebody into a villain by just taking somebody out of life and plucking them down somewhere.
Yeah,
just piling on the pressure, being mean to them until they do something extraordinary.
Yeah. Have you found that as you go on that you've with Gunnhildur, has her role become smaller and smaller and smaller in her own series?
It hasn't become.
Or the focus has come away from her?
The focus has come away from her a little bit. She's still as essential as she always has been.
Yeah.
Because you need that focus of the investigation to bring everything together and to provide a little bit of extra. How shall I say it? To give it that focus, you have to have the investigation there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mean it's got to be a key part of the whole thing, isn't it? But I'd say your interest is naturally sort of more focused upon them. And you said that in your latest one, which is Cold Malice. Cold Malice is coming out on the 11th of June. Everybody, that's today. You can buy it today. Get onto Amazon. I'm pretty sure the bookshops won't be open on the 11th of June or today.
Let's see.
who knows? But it's certainly Amazon's definitely open. So get on there and to anywhere else. Cold Malice. You said that one has a little bit of your nautical background in.
A little bit of nautical stuff in there as well. Yeah. This one's about a guy. This is about a man who disappears.
Right.
It's about a man who fakes his own death.
Okay. And I'm hoping he does this at sea.
No, sort of. I don't want to give away too much, but he manages to. He's presented with an unusual, with a unique event, and on the spur of the moment, he decides to use it to fake his own death and disappear.
Right. Okay.
And he does that, and he lives a very comfortable life for the intervening 15 years, somewhere warm, nice job, beautiful girlfriend, lovely house. But after a few years, he starts to get restless. He wants to know what's happening to his children.
Yeah. So
he's, against his own better judgment, he goes back.
Right.
And naturally, it doesn't go as he expects.
Yeah, because I imagine Iceland's not heavily populated, isn't it? You go back, people might not notice you.
This is actually the problem with Iceland, because it's such a small society that somebody is going to notice you.
Yeah.
And of course, somebody does.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily the people he expected to notice him.
Well, because that's something that must be interesting about the way you go about writing these Icelandic-set books. I mean, yes, the weather is unique, and the climate is the same thing. The geography is unique, but also the society is fairly unique, isn't it? Because there's so few people there.
There's 300 and something thousand people there now, so it's a little bit bigger than Portsmouth.
It's incredible, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah,
and it's a massive place, isn't it, Iceland?
It's an island it's bigger than Wales, but smaller than Ireland.
Right. Okay. So it's smaller than I thought, but still, for that population.
If you really put your foot down, you can just about drive right the way around it in a day.
Right.
Well, in a day and a night, maybe. But it's an awful lot of driving.
Yeah. Well, if you go at the right time of year, you can drive 24 hours there, can't you? Because the sun doesn't set. So.
You could. Yeah.
Quentin, I'm looking at the time, and always the time flies on these things. 15 minutes is just not long enough. But to make it onto Instagram, we have no choice. We are ruled by technology. So I'm going to say thank you very much for giving up your time today, and thanks for talking to us. Again, Cold Malice is out today.
Cold Malice is out today. Here it is.
There we are. There you know what it looks like.
A mirror image, so I have to get used to that.
Quentin, thank you very much, and I will speak to you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. Much appreciated.